Hello. In this video, we'll be going over IRS Form 8971, information regarding beneficiaries acquiring property from a decedent. So this form was updated in August of 2025. Prior to that, the most recent version of the form dates back to 2016. So the structure of the form is a little bit different in that 8971 is a different form from the schedule, which happens to be Schedule A. So we will go through this form, and then we're going to talk about Schedule A, which would be issued to beneficiaries. So if there are two beneficiaries, there would be two Schedule A's. So there are a couple of other cosmetic changes, but really this form is mostly intact from the prior version. Before we go too far into this form, I do want to highlight a couple of things. First, this is the purpose of this form is to provide information to the IRS about beneficiaries that acquired property from a decedent. And then the Schedule A provides basis information to each beneficiary when they acquire that property. This form is only filed in situations where the executor of an estate is required to file an estate tax return. So a Form 706 or 706NA under the Internal Revenue Code. So it's not required if the gross estate is below the annual, the basic exclusion amount. So for the vast majority of taxpayers would not be completing a Form 8971, or if there's a special type of estate tax form that's filed, like a Form 706 CE or a 706 QDT, those are pretty rare. Or if the estate tax return is sold primarily to elect portability of the spouse exclusion amount, if you're making a generation skipping tax, transfer tax election, or if it's for state requirements. So the vast majority of people aren't going to be completing a Form 8971 for a decedent. So let's go through the form itself. So Part 1 has information as it relates to the decedent, and then Part 2 is a summary section about the beneficiaries themselves. So again, if there are two beneficiaries, we would complete two Schedule 1s. This is kind of the roll-up section where all of that information is aggregated. So let's go ahead and start completing Part 1. The decedent's name. Well, so let's see. Let's say that the decedent passed away in 2026. Let's just use. So again, the filing deadline for this form basically depends. It's on a very similar schedule to the 706. So this form is required no later than the earlier of one of two dates, either 30 days after the filing deadline for the Form 706 or 30 days after the date that it's actually filed. So Form 706 or 706NA generally has a 9-month timeline. Then this form is supposed to be filed within 30 days after either the deadline or the actual file date. So if John Doe passed away in March 1st of 2026, this form would be due by the end of the year. Let's go ahead and complete the rest of the information fields. Executor's TIN. This could be a social security number if so that would tie back to the executor's name. And then there are instructions for line 8. So if there are multiple executors, You would attach a list with all the names, addresses, phone numbers, and the TINs for each executor. So in this situation, we're just going to make it very simple. We're going to have one executor. His name is Joseph Smith. And we're going to put down the rest of his contact information. So if this were a foreign country, would put the name of the foreign country, the province, state, or the county, and then the foreign postal code. We're not going to check the box here, but if we did, you would enter, you would attach a list. This is a form that is mailed to the IRS, and we've updated our guidance in our article, but there is one exact filing address with the IRS. So that's the Internal Revenue Service, Mail Stop 824G, 7940 Kentucky Drive, Florence, Kentucky 41042. We've updated our article to reflect that. So you would mail everything together to include that list if necessary. For line 9, that is if the estate did elect an alternate valuation based on alternate valuation rules, then you would select the date of that alternate valuation. We'll go ahead and skip that for this video, and we're going to go straight on to part 2, beneficiary information. So line 1, how many beneficiaries are there of the estate? So it should be the total number of beneficiaries, the number of beneficiaries that have acquired only accepted property. And then we're going to, complete this. The instructions don't have a whole lot of guidance here on what is accepted property. There's a whole long list. So accepted property includes US dollars, CDs, denominated, basically cash or cash equivalents, and then property that was completely sold in any number of events. So there is a standard definition of what accepted property is. And then, so we're going to go ahead and let's just say that everyone received only accepted property. Everyone has acquired everything. And we're going to file 2 Schedule A's. All assets of the estate will be sold before distribution. You would check that box here if that's applicable. You don't have to. And then the information for each beneficiary. So again, every person that is listed here is going to have their own Schedule A that is issued to them. All of those forms will be sent to the IRS when the executor files. So let's just say that John Doe left behind 2 children. So for the date provided to the beneficiary, that would be the date that or the executor provided the Schedule A to the beneficiary. So let's just say that they received their scheduled days on the same date. And let's just say that the total value was, let's call it $8 million per person. Uh-oh. Now, the executor would sign this page if there's a tax preparer. They can sign all of this information. The yes or no, may the IRS discuss this return with the preparer shown below. So the executor does have to give express permission for this particular form. Generally, it's recommended that if you have a tax preparer prepare it, that you give the IRS permission to discuss the return with that person. But if there were more beneficiaries, more than the, looks like 7 fields up here, there's a long list, and you can keep going all the way down to the bottom of page 2. And then we'll see all the amounts added up. So we did have 2 people that inherited $8 million each. The total of any additional part 2s. So if we needed to run through more of these, then we would add more versions of that second page. And then we're just totaling this up. So this is the report that the IRS would receive on the entire estate of John Doe. And then they would also receive for each person, in this case Elizabeth and Jane Doe, they would also receive a Schedule A, which we're going to complete right now. So let's go ahead and start completing this information for the beneficiaries. So in this case, let's just use Jane Doe. Okay. So we're going to skip lines 7F, G, and H, as mentioned earlier. And now we're going to visit the Part 2 information field. So just real quick, so the instructions are pretty silent on what all of this is. So the first box would apply if this is a supplemental filing. Basically, if this supplements a previously filed Form 8971 or Schedule A. B, if there is a change of beneficiary. Or C, change of beneficiary information. And then D, if there's a change to any other information. And then we're just going to go through each item. So where the item is reported on the estate tax return. So we'll just kind of make things up. We don't have the 706, but you would use the schedule. So give me a moment. I'm pulling up a So if you wanted to put, like, say, Schedule C, for that would be the schedule that contains like mortgages, notes, and cash. Let's just say that that's item 2, and we'll just say that it's cash. And we'll say that for all of this, 50% interest, we're splitting down the middle between Jane Doe and Elizabeth Doe. Did this asset increase this estate tax liability? We're going to say if so. Basically, the answer is yes, only if the estate tax was generated and if this asset contributed to that estate tax. So if it wasn't subject to a marital or a charitable deduction, then it's going to be a yes. And then the valuation date would be, in this case, the date that he passed away. So we call that 3/1/2026, and then we're just going to say that that was $4 million. And then let's just say that item 2, we're going to put 3 items here. So item 2 was, let's just say that there was an estate, like house, mansion, complex that they also inherited. And we're just going to say the Doe residence 50%. This did increase the estate tax liability, and we'll say that this was valued at $3 million. And then the last one being stocks and bonds, we're going to say that this was also a yes. Oh. We'll say this was $1 million. And then now if you wanted to continue this on the next page, you have all of these lines again as stated before. And we're going to go to the bottom. We're going to add all of the amounts from column H up here, which is $8 million, which is exactly what we were reporting on the 8971. If we had to use additional part 2s, we would attach them to the schedule. We don't have any of that. So this Schedule A reconciles, assuming we have another one with Elizabeth Doe's information. So the Jane Doe Schedule A, if there's another one for Elizabeth Doe that contains the exact same amount, they total up to $16 million, which is the amount that is reported for each of them, $8 million here. And the $16 million is reflected in the total. So this would be an appropriately filed Form 8971. Again, mail this to the IRS at the address located in this instructions. And we break all of this information down in our article, which you can find on the website. We'll put the links to both the article here as well as relevant resources for any other forms that might be pertinent to this video. We'll put links to those in the show notes as well. So if you like the article, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like the video, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comment section. Thank you very much and have a great day.